While the term ideas in the general usage envisages meanings as something individuals think up for themselves, ideology specifies meanings insofar as they are social and collective. Althusser, 1965. It is this social and collective aspect of ideologies that make them potent forces of change in our world. History is littered with examples of positive and progressive ideologies, such as Gandhi's Satyagraha, or as expressed in the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. However, the kinds of ideologies that often end up writing or rewriting history are hegemonies. Hegemonies are characterized by A, the ultimate goal of monopolistic control of social thought, B, the elimination of competing ideologies, and C, gaining and maintaining widespread support to protect the interests of the ruling class. While the goals of hegemonies are unabashedly self-serving, the tactics used to achieve them are insidious. Hegemonies use myths and selective storytelling to spread ideology, maintain ideology, and eliminate competitive ideologies. Some of the best examples of hegemony, or at least the attempt at achieving hegemony using myths and selective histories, occurred in the former Soviet Union during the World Wars and Cold War. The first propaganda poster is portraying a nameless but obviously Russian figure juxtaposed with a caricatured capital. The Russian is young, strong, wearing red, and stalwartly carrying a red banner. Capital is obese, ugly, clawed, wearing Western bourgeois clothing, and carrying a black flag. The translated caption reads, "Death to capital," or "Death under the heel of capitalism." Such caricatures blatantly employ what Giles and Middleton call mythic figures, in that certain figures acquire the status of hero or villain, thereby standing in for the whole nexus of determining factors, motivations, and interests. Here, the illustrator has oversimplified and obscured all points of view save two: capitalism and an unnamed ideology, as there is no direct mention of socialism or Marxism. Instead, the only value or symbol contrasted with capitalism is the man clad in Russian peasant garb, implying that one can be a capitalist, fat, clawed, and greedy, or a Russian, strong and steadfast. Also implied by the poster is that there are no gray areas or blend of perspectives. The world and its available belief systems are black or white, obscuring the probable reality of moderate or more pluralistic viewpoints. This, combined with the kill or be killed imagery of the triumphant or defeated characters, implies that choosing sides is a matter of survival. In truth it is, but not so much for the Russian peasants as it is for the ruling Russian class, which sought to preserve its hold on Russian politics. Thus, much like the masterminds behind the French Revolution, the Soviets had to represent its own sectarian class interests as universal and of democratic value. Another use of myths, symbols, and the selective representation of history is portrayed in the second propaganda poster. Here we have no graphic representation of the opposing side, just referred to in the caption as the enemy, but the depiction of peasants is at the forefront. The man and woman are both strong and able-bodied, wielding hammers and wrenches, and surrounded by anvils, the hammer and sickle on a soldier's helmet, gears, and guns. The background contains smokestacks of busy factories, cranes, trains, bridges, power lines, and other workers toiling hard for their daily bread. The caption reads, "With guns we will defeat the enemy. With hard work we will have bread. To work, comrades." Such images and words directly relate to Hayden White's ideas about historiography, namely, that the significance of historical events is produced by the historian, and historiography is closely related to the writing of fiction, using similar fictive devices such as plot and character. In the propaganda poster, the characters are strong, hardworking, helpful to the nation in defeating the enemy, and are justly rewarded with food. The setting is one of industry and progress, one of building up the nation brick by brick and building bridges and trains to go to new places. In reality, few Russian peasants were probably fed so well, had such striking physiques, and were immune to the pollution and harsh conditions of iron plants and metalworking factories. Indeed, Stalin is infamous in history for allowing millions of Russians and Ukrainians to starve to death in the genocide-like event known as Holodomor, the hunger. Such depictions again serve to obscure the reality as to who the enemy of the people really was, and to spread the virtues of hard work for little reward. The third propaganda poster in Appendix C is from the Cold War era, and uses a different set of symbols and myths to retell history. In this portrayal, there are no stern-faced, serious, toiling peasants, but a small group of families marching with smiling faces, red scarves, red flags, red shirts, and which appear to be middle class, not farmers or factory workers. Behind them looms presumably a nuclear missile with a red star, and the caption reads, "We are peaceful people, yet our armored train stands at the ready." Such an illustration represents the hegemonic dilemma of having both to achieve power at all costs, but also not to be seen widely as an aggressor. The caption matches almost perfectly with the Chartist slogan, "Peaceably if we can, forcibly if we must." In other words, hegemony must rule by winning consent in conjunction with the threat of force. The effectiveness of hegemony depending on how rarely force, always present, actually has to be used. Thus, it would not do for the Soviet government to portray any longer Russians as hammer-swinging, gun-making workers, but happy, calm, peaceful people interested in maintaining their own family life. Such an absence, again, of depicting the enemy serves to reinforce this idea that Russians are not interested in destroying anyone else with nuclear missiles, just on defending themselves and maintaining their own way of life in their own homeland. Thus, the posters embody the old adage about history. Who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. Through propagating an us versus them survival mentality and eliminating pluralism, through heroizing self-sacrifice and exploitation of the majority by a minority ruling class, and by espousing an image of peace combined with nuclear capabilities, the Soviet propaganda posters stand as a testament and a warning that hegemony is real, active, and deceitful above all things. Beware.